Page, Environmental Health Director for Lake County Public Health Agency. I'm just going to give you a quick update on the applications that we've processed so far for reopening businesses in Lake County. To date, we have processed, or we've received and processed 84 business social distancing protocols. 79 lodging facilities have submitted to be open, and 24 retail food establishments have submitted to be open for dining. And that's what I've got.
Thank you, Jackie. Is there any questions for anybody at Public Health or Dr. Lisa about testing and infection in Lake County at this point?
Yes, this is Greg Lobby. For Jackie, have you heard anything from the governor's office about the reopening of bars? I'm getting that question from some bar owners, and I'm sure you are too.
So yes, yesterday Governor Polis did speak to additional openings. As of today, there are some draft guidance documents open to public comment. The process is after they close the public comment time tomorrow, then they'll make any final revisions to those guidance documents, and we are looking for the official public health order to come out on Thursday the 18th, and that is the anticipated date that bars should be able to open. But at this point in time, if bars are interested in viewing the current draft document, we can certainly send that to them, and they still have time to send in any of their public comments that they would like to make.
And so we
sent out an email to all of our licensed retail food establishments and bars this morning, letting them know where they can go to do that public comment.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, I believe in the draft document, does it state that they will be able to open at 25% capacity?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
Okay.
Or up to 50 people or something like that.
Yeah,
yep.
Whichever is lower.
Correct.
Okay, wonderful. Does anybody have any further questions for Lake County Public Health or Dr. Lisa? No? All right. Well, thank you all for joining us and for giving us the update. We definitely appreciate it. If you have anything further to share, please feel free to reach out. Thank you. Bye. All right. So next on our meeting, we have EDC updates and requests. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Wells and Marla Ackridge, who is our new director of the EDC.
Thank you, Kayla, for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I wanted to give you an update as to the progress of our first two rounds of our grant funding. The first round was for $1,500 grants, and the criteria was set so that if they had received any other state or federal funding, they were ineligible. So in that first round, we had 30 applicants, and 18 of those had received some other form of federal or state funding. So we had to decline those. Originally, what we were hoping to do is fund people that didn't get any funding. We were kind of surprised that so many of our businesses had qualified for primarily SBA, PPP, and EIDL loans. So when we did that, we had quite a bit of money left over, $18,000. So we thought we would do another round of, $12,000. We do another round of $500 grants and be able to help another 24 local businesses. We did get 33 grants, or 34. We funded 33. We're still waiting on documentation for the 34th. We only had enough money to fund 24, so we did request funding from the county commissioners for the additional 9, which you graciously consented to. So we were able to fund all the applicants. So we funded 44 of 45 so far. The last one hopefully we'll do in the last or in the next day or two. 12 of those were $1,500 grants, and by sector, 4 went to lodging businesses, 1 to a restaurant, 1 to a bar, 2 to general retail, 1 to personal services, and 3 to construction. And then sectors for the next 33, 1 went to gas and convenience, 3 to lodging, 2 to restaurants, 15 to general retail, 1 to retail liquor, 2 to attractions, museums, and recreation, 1 to a nonprofit, and 1 to an event. So wanted to give you that update, see if you had any questions about how that went, or any other questions about the process.
I don't think that I have any questions. I think it went really smoothly, and I think people were really thankful for that opportunity for the EDC to do that. I'm wondering if through the process, if you had received any feedback, and I see Paul has his hand raised as well, if you had received any feedback about the need into the winter months.
Very much, and irrespective of this, I've reached out to a number of businesses over the past several weeks since we finished up the program, and most of the businesses I talked to are doing okay right now. I mean, it hasn't been great, but some of them have had good months in May, and they're making ends meet. But there is significant concern about what November, December, January are going to look like. And so I think over the rest of this summer, the EDC is putting together some plans to help businesses make it through those gaps. Also, when I spoke to them about the funding that the county commissioners had gotten from the state and their feelings about that, they thought, you know, using maybe a third of it now for PPP and current needs, but they really thought it would be very, very wise and helpful if 2/3 or so of that money was held back, because they are anticipating that the late fall and winter is going to be very difficult.
Paul, I see you have your hand raised. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, please. John, you mentioned that you distributed funds to 3 construction interests.
Yes.
I'm wondering the criteria that was used, because I don't think construction was ever halted.
No, it wasn't halted, but for some of them, they did have some difficulties getting materials and doing things in a timely manner. So we did ask for an explanation of why the need occurred and what the bills that back that up. And a lot of it dealt with safety equipment for their employees and delays getting materials so they could move ahead on construction.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mudge, Commissioner Glenn, do either of you have any questions for John about that update?
Mine was just kind of along the same lines as Paul's. Thank you very much for that. And I was just going to ask, because it did trigger with the construction, you know, I think it's just interesting to glean what the different challenges are, even with businesses that have been able to remain open or haven't been prohibited from doing business, though of course we understand everybody's got their challenges through the event. So no, that was helpful to hear, John. Thank you.
You bet.
Wonderful. Thanks, John. Next on our list from you is a property tax payment date pushback. Do you want to speak to us about that?
Yeah, one other thing is we haven't gotten your $4,500 check yet to fund the additional grants. And so
Okay.
I was just going to double check and see if it was mailed or if I just hadn't run across it.
I will check in with Tara and I'll send her an email and copy you on it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then through conversations we've had with businesses over the past 2 to 3 months, as I said before, they're making ends meet. Things are starting to pick up, but with property tax payments due June 30th, a lot of them felt that that was going to be a challenge and could inhibit their ability to cash flow their business if they need to buy more goods to sell or that kind of thing. It would kind of eat into their cash to be able to continue those aspects of their businesses. So they all felt that a delay till the end of August would make it much easier for them to get through the summer and manage their cash flow. And so, and I can't remember a single business that didn't feel that that would help considerably, because April and May were, in the last half of March were gone months. And so a lot of them do have cash flow challenges. And so they all felt that a slight delay in when property tax payments would be payable to the end of August would significantly help their cash flow.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry if I missed this, is the request from the EDC for, I don't even know if we could do that, separate the property tax from commercial or residential?
Yeah, I didn't know that either. So, I mean, I wasn't, if there's a way for us to help the businesses, but actually too, I haven't talked to any senior citizens and individuals, but I suppose some of those could be having some problems. A lot of them are on fixed incomes that probably weren't changed by this, but you never know. So I thought I would leave that up to your judgment and assessment as to, if you did one, would you apply it also to residential and the other kinds of property? And I wasn't familiar with the legal constraints on doing it for some and not others.
I know, and I think Commissioner Marcella has more info on this, but we did get this inquiry from a business owner and had spoken to the treasurer a bit about it. And his response, I mean, he had told us that he had gotten 80% of property taxes already, and that was several weeks ago. And we didn't, unless Commissioner Marcella has more information, I don't think that we really got other details on how we even might go about doing that.
So it sounds like it is something that we could do if we wanted to do it locally, but what we would need to do first is we would need to get the permission of the other entities in the taxing area. So it will impact us, the city, the hospital, sanitation, so several entities, and so we need to be able to have them have permission from them to delay that property tax collection. It could cause some administrative issues with the interest and penalties that have been assessed already on people that have already paid their taxes. The second half of taxes were actually due yesterday. So after speaking with Patrick yesterday about property tax collection, we're at 95% collected right
Wow.
now. So he doesn't feel as though there is an overwhelming sense of collection lacking, I guess, if that makes sense.
Right. It is.
He seems to feel like there's the majority of collected, and that the administrative piece of getting all of those entities to buy into that might not be worth it for us to do that at this point. The large piece of the delinquent taxes that are missing come from one entity that we know of that is currently going through a bankruptcy proceeding. So we are expecting that delinquency and have been anyway. So so I think he feels as though there's not an overwhelming sense of that being a piece of relief, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the timing of this probably could have been better had we made the request a month ago.
Yeah.
It would have given us some time to work these details out and let the business owners know that they had some time to make that payment and they could direct the money elsewhere. But it sounds like they went ahead and made their payments.
Yeah, so if you were making half payments, the first half of the payment was due in February. The second half was due yesterday. If you pay the full amount, it was due in April. And so I don't know for sure, and we'd have to clarify with Patrick. I think if you paid the amount in full, the governor had extended that to June 30th without interest or penalties, but we could clarify with Patrick on that.
Okay.
I think that sounds about what he had talked to us about previously. So I mean, at this point in time, I'm not sure that there's anything for us to take action on in that area because we don't have full buy-in from those other entities at this point to make that determination or decision.
And it really doesn't sound like it's going to affect many people at this point. It seems to me most people have made their payments.
Yeah. From talking to Patrick yesterday, it sounds like the majority of payments have been collected.
Well, it doesn't seem to me it's worth the complications that you guys would have to go through, for maybe a very small minority that haven't made their payments yet.
Right. So I think for that, then we can move on to our next topic on our agenda, which is the Leadville Coalition.
And really, I was just, we've shared some emails on that, maybe for everybody else on the call. I'll give a little history. Back in 2013, the Leadville Coalition had about, I think it was $55,000 left. The EDC went to them to get initial funding to get the EDC started. That's when we were first forming. And the Leadville Coalition was formed in 1990 with a $250,000 grant from Climax to help with economic growth, economic development for Lake County. And so it was given to the physical or the municipal entities, the city, the county, sanitation district, the Parkville Water District, CMC, the school district, and then the Chamber of Commerce were the ones that were given spots on the board to administer those funds. Through the years, they funded different economic development projects, but we went to them, and since we were going to try and promote and take over economic development in the county, they did initially grant us $46,000. They had another $8,000 matching fund grant through DOLA that they were working on. And then my assumption was, from the conversations I had, is once that was done, they would dissolve the corporation and give their final balance, which would have been about $1,700 to the EDC. That never occurred. The DOLA matching grant never occurred. And so they had $9,700 left in their account. Their last meeting was in February of 2013 when they funded the EDC. And there hasn't been a meeting since. There's been some conversations about Mike Berdonia was the president at the time. He was going to get it dissolved, but that never occurred. So Angelina of the Leadville Sanitation District is the one who's basically been keeping the records for that board. And so she contacted me and asked, thought if there was some way to dissolve that organization and get rid of the money so she didn't have to manage it, look over it. It's still, they're paying for audits every year. So I sent you all out an email with some of that information. She has been extremely helpful in helping me go back through the records back to 1990 when they were originally formed, the formation documents. And we did find I think it was in 2009, they stopped paying their Secretary of State fees to keep the corporation in good standing. So the corporation right now is not considered in good standing with the state of Colorado, although they have been filing all their tax returns. So that is complete. So what my suggestion is, and I'm not even part of the coalition, but to the people who are, is if we reform, got that group back together, got the corporation back in good standing, did a board meeting to dissolve the corporation, distribute the assets upon dissolution, and then file a certificate of dissolution with the Secretary of State, we could put that organization to rest. So we would need a commissioner or a representative from the county appointed to be on that board. And so I'm reaching out to all the organizations. Mayor Lobby, you're on this call, so we'll need one from the city. I sent you the same series of emails while you were on vacation, but we'll need representatives from both the city and the county and the other organizations that I listed, so we can call a board meeting and start that dissolution process.
John, a quick question. You may have answered already, and I haven't had a chance to look at the emails. I think when I get back from vacation, I just do a blanket delete and I'm done with it. So, not really. Is there any chance that the matching DOLA funds would ever be forthcoming?
No, that project is done and gone. It was a project back in 2013, and they were looking at funding it in late 2013, but it was never funded.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Marcella, would you want to be the named representative there? Given your
I can do that. Yeah, I've worked with John pretty extensively to get some of the background information on that, and I'd be happy to sit on that to get that process done. Commissioner Glenn, would that be okay with you?
I don't hear anything.
Me either. I believe Commissioner Glenn is on our, oh, there we go. Can you hear, we can't hear you yet, Commissioner Glenn. Okay. I don't hear Commissioner Glenn. I know he's here though. So Commissioner Glenn, I think I can't hear you, so I'll plan on participating on that and relaying back to the board what happens with, or go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'll move to nominate Commissioner Marcella to the Leadville Coalition board as the county representative in order to move through the process of dissolving the corporation and getting those funds to the EDC.
I'll second. Okay, so we do have a motion. Commissioner Glenn, is there any further discussion from you on that? I think your phone itself might be muted because you're able to unmute on here, but you might have to click on mute on your phone. All right, any further discussion, Sarah, about the Leadville Corp?
Nope.
I do have a question for Chris Floyd since she's on the call. I copied her on all of these emails, and Chris, I'm no attorney, but you helped me through this, dissolving the Silver Hills HOA, and this seems to be very similar. Did my emails and process make sense to you? Is there anything I left out or we need to do?
Hey, John, unfortunately, I'm in the same boat as Mayor Lobby right now, in that I have not had the time this week to review those emails. We'll do that and take a look and see if there's anything different that needs to be done. I think the distinction between the HOA dissolution and this would be that the HOA dissolution did require specific notice to each of the property owners, and I don't think anything like that would be indicated here. So we'll take a look and circle back around with you with any suggested changes to the process that you've described.
Okay, there are no members of the corporation. There's only the 7 directors. So hopefully that will simplify it.
Yes, I would believe so.
Well, great. I think once we get started in those people, it shouldn't take much more than an hour or two. So if even that. So I'll work on getting representatives from the other entities and get this moving. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So we still do have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Glenn, since I can't hear you, if you would like to vote an aye vote, if you hit *9, that will raise your hand and that we will count and consider that an aye vote if that is appropriate. Wonderful. So he votes aye. I vote aye. Sarah?
Yes.
Wonderful. Great. Commissioner Glenn, we'll do that for our next item as well, okay? So next on our topic here is a 5304 CDOT grant opportunity. I need to have an approval from the Board of County Commissioners to submit this grant to CDOT. It is due on Friday. Mayor Lave and I have been working with a transportation committee to develop transportation within Lake County. And so this grant, this 5304 grant opportunity enables us to put together a feasibility plan in Lake County and have a consultant draft and do that plan for us. So when we had met with our regional transportation committee, it was recommended that we revamp our original feasibility study that was done in 2009. So Mayor Lave and myself felt as though this was an appropriate next step for us to take and felt that we had the time to take this step. The city and county would need to match the grant $10,000. The city has agreed to match $5,000. Greg, if I'm speaking out of turn, please correct me.
No, you're doing great.
Okay. So the city has agreed to match 5,000. The county will match 5,000. And then CDOT will pick up the remainder. It's an 80-20 split on the grant. So I am just seeking permission. Mayor Labe, if you would like to elaborate on the work that we've done for transportation.
We had a very robust group of people. I mean, it was a tremendous, from all around the region, willing to help us get a transportation network established in Lake County, because, you know, almost everybody around us has some sort of a shuttle system, you know, and we don't. And there are a lot of different reasons to put that in place, not the least of which is medical outlying areas. We've been talking about trying to tie in our outlying areas, trailer parks mostly, to the city, and we felt like this was very important. And we had a lot of momentum until COVID showed up, and thank goodness Commissioner Marcella dove in and went ahead and went forward with this 5304, because it really is the establishing the need in our community, around which then we apply for more funding, especially the vans themselves.
So just to tag on to that a little bit, I talked with CDOT about getting some technical assistance on our grant application, and through the Rural Transit Authority, they have grant money to offer for technical assistance. So they're helping us do a technical review of our grant document prior to submission for free, because we qualified for that funding as well. So, so we've really leveraged all the funding that we could possibly leverage to get this pushed through, but it is due by Friday, and I do need to have the support of the board prior to the submission of it on Friday, which is what I'm looking for now.
Thank you both. Is the Northwest COG involved with the RTCC and that group? Has a representative been in the conversation?
They were involved for several of those meetings, yes.
I also have a representative from them that was assigned to us to do some of the technical review of our grant.
So who is, and the grant is going to cover an assessment of a transportation plan?
No.
It would be a needs assessment of transportation to Lake County.
So when we had met with CDOT and with that stakeholder group previously, January, February-ish, and then Mayor Labe and Jeff Guthrie and myself had met after that. After we had gone through the feasibility study that was presented to us from Ostrander Consulting in 2009, we had determined through some of the changes in demographics that we've had from 2009 until right now, we needed to have a new feasibility study done or needs assessment done to determine either a fixed route or an on-demand service to assist with transportation needs in our outlying communities, to get them into the city center of the community and connect them to other forms of public transportation to Summit County and Eagle County, and then potentially to the Bustang, which travels through the I-70 corridor.
Will this incorporate also kind of a longer term plan with Summit County and our relationship currently with transit? Because I think I'm just worried right now that with COVID and expenses and Jeff Guthrie leaving his position there, I have not reached out to Curtis Gardner yet to really understand, what the future of our current transportation agreement or arrangement, I should say, is. And I'm wondering about that. I'm also wondering, is this intended to point to a publicly provided service? Or I know I had asked the question at one point, is there any way we can incentivize somebody local to create a business to do this?
The answer is that we are approaching this from the public sector standpoint. I mean, I love your idea of a private sector solution, but I'm not sure how we would empower that. What we want to do to start with, without getting into too much detail, is maybe start with one van, one driver, and have it donation based, and maybe make it only on demand. People call, schedule, go pick them up from the Eagle's Nest and take them to Safeway, or from Mountain View and take them, to Safeway or to a doctor's appointment, and make that the establishment of a system. And then we can move to a scheduled shuttle system. We've been kind of warned that can create a great deal more expense. So the on-demand system is more simple at the front end and less expensive to start. And we've heard that not only from Jeff Guthrie, and we told him he couldn't leave, but he did anyway. But also from the Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments, where they established a van system. They started kind of the same way, with one van on demand, and now they have 8 vans, 6 in Canyon City, and I think 2 in Westcliff. So they've come a long ways, but it's been 9 years. It's taken a while to get to that point.
Yeah. And do you remember what their current budget is, Mayor?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't know if they shared that with us, but
I don't think they did.
no.
I don't think they shared that much detail with us. But they have made enough money off of their donation system to increase their service, is what they had told us. But I think before that, going back to what this grant is actually for, this is actually for the feasibility study to determine if there is a need, and if there is a need, how do we meet the need?
Yeah, right. What is the need? What's the budget compared to our ability together as city and county?
Yeah.
To meet
And then
that?
there are additional 5311 funds that we can apply for this service locally that would not be in competition with the 5311 funds that we apply for regionally with Summit County. So there's multiple funding opportunities, and CDOT was a player at the table. Brody and I think there were 2 others from CDOT that had come to that meeting with us and had spoke of the importance of having this local service to tie into the regional service. So CDOT is aware of it and supportive of the need. Again, it's an 80-20 split with the grant. And so I think if the county's only giving $5,000 for that and the city's giving $5,000 for that, if the money's available now, we don't know if the money will be available next year to do a study for a consultant.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, and what, the Intermountain Transportation Region and state funding to further assist us along in the process will look like. I mean, that seems to be a bit up in the air.
It would be nice, but once we have the study, we can kind of reconvene that group of people. And again, they were from Summit County, they were from Eagle County, they were from Chaffee County. We also had regionally people coming, from Larimer County, Fort Collins area, to really help us along with this. And but everybody agreed that until we go through the feasibility study, we can't really make progress. Brody did say he might have some equipment that's laying about that as soon as we applied for a 5310, he might be able to get us a van very quickly. So we'll see.
So do we put out an RFP for a contractor to do this study, or is this through CDOT and they will do this?
So we will put out an RFP for a consultant to do the feasibility study. And then they'll give it to us and we'll submit it to CDOT, and then that'll just close that grant, the 5304 grant.
Okay, and who's gonna manage, and they'll be self-facilitating and manage once we put that contractor into place?
Yeah.
Who's gonna administer
I'll take it.
the deliverables of the grant?
I think between Greg and myself, we can handle.
I was thinking Commissioner Mudge would be a good candidate. Okay.
I'm just trying to step back, and while I cannot argue that there is a need, and it will be interesting to get, more specifics so that we can move forward, as the airport industrial park, and there are other projects that need attention, and I just want to be cognizant of spreading staff too thin, or, the timing of things.
There's no good way to say, we have lots of bandwidth to do this. That's not true. What I've said from the very beginning is the city is really committed to this. I mean, we've been talking about it too long. It's really something our community has needed, and we need to make this happen. So I want the city to be all in on whatever we need to do.
Yeah, I don't think that it's an overwhelming project like an admin operating project from CDOT. I think it's a project that's very manageable. So I'd be happy to take that on. We won't know for sure about the award for a while. So we can play it by ear at that point too.
Mm-hmm. Do we have, I imagine CDOT or other regional transportation agencies have a template for an RFP for what we're looking for, and we can kind of plug and play with.
Yeah, I think that we have our old RFP for our previous feasibility study still available as well.
Okay.
And RTA, Regional Transit Authority, has grant money to assist with the technical aspect of that, and they can help us develop that as well.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the submission of 5304 CDOT grant for feasibility study of transportation in Lake County.
I will second. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Glenn, do you have any further discussion on the topic? I'll do the same as last time.
Kayla?
Yep.
Do we need to put in that $5,000? Like you said, we will not know about the award, so we don't know. That $5,000 will come when and if we were awarded the grant, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Glenn, do you have any further questions or comments on this grant? I am still having trouble hearing you, but I think if you hit *6, it will unmute you. Are you there?
I don't know what's it, like you said, Commissioner Marcella, on here, it looks like he's unmuted, but I cannot hear anything either.
I can't either. Commissioner Glenn, I feel like we're ready at this point to take a vote. If you are voting for an aye vote, you can hit *9 to raise your hand.
I'll vote aye.
Okay, I'll vote aye. Commissioner Glenn also is an aye vote. Thank you, Commissioner Glenn. So I do apologize, John and Marla. I completely skipped over our airport industrial park update listed under the EDC. Would you care to talk about that quickly?
Just while we had the group on here, I wanted to know if Marla and I needed to do any preparation for our meeting on Thursday as far as gathering information. It's a lot of stuff I don't have in my head, so I would have to go through EDC files if there's information I may need for that meeting.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, John, do you mean for the EDC meeting on Thursday?
No, this is Ann Schneider, Paul Clarkson, Marla, myself, and I think Kayla are going to meet to talk about the status of the airport park and where we're headed.
And now that we have Marla on board, understand what role she can take in helping us get that development moving forward. Ann and Paul, do you have anything specific that you'll need from John to prepare for that on Thursday?
I don't think I do.
All that I understand, I mean, I think unless you understand that any OEDIT or any state grants or funding or technical assistance even regarding infrastructure. And then I know Commissioner Marcella helped kind of clean up the engagement with Marson Engineering and that conceptual planning, which unfortunately didn't get as far as we had hoped. And then you all will probably talk about some of that title work, correct? Is there anything needed from the airport or the FAA on any of that confusion out there?
Probably not at this point, Sarah. But
Okay.
you know, in as much as you are listing a bunch of items, why aren't you involved in this meeting?
We can make it public and invite Commissioner Mudge and Commissioner Glenn if you'd like.
You know, I'm stepping all over Sarah here. She may have other plans at this particular time. But I'm sort of thinking that Sarah has a dog in this fight.
I think just because of the boundary of the airport, we had done some legwork when we were realizing why, or trying to figure out why the scope of work hadn't been completed the way that we anticipated with the EDC's last attempt, right? So then we discovered some of that overlap, and unfortunately, I apologize. I don't know what the status was there, but maybe we can actually let Ann pipe in here, because I think that we had instructed, or I had spoken to Ann or land use to try to get some of that ironed out.
Right. So I'm working with Brett, so I can bring in the title piece on Thursday and just kind of say where we're at there. And I've been coordinating with Mabel to get all of, like the FAA and all of that information, so that maybe we can create just one sharing space where we can put all of the pieces and parts together, so that moving forward, we've kind of got everybody dialed in and on the same page.
Wonderful. And then I think we just need to get that, need to get all of that figured out before we can move through the process of subdivision. Is that correct, Ann?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We need to get the title issues taken care of, and further the work, kind of where we're at with Marson. And, yes, we've got to lay that groundwork in the readiness for subdivision.
Okay, and I do have the information from Marson Engineering as to where they left off and why they left off where they did. So we do have the opportunity, if we want to, when we come out of that conversation, to apply for an additional round of READY grants, Rural Economic Development grants through DOLA, for that work to be completed. If we wanted to, since we de-obligated some of that funding due to some of those title work issues. So that might be some potential if we come out of that conversation feeling like we're in a good place.
Yeah, I think it's important for all kind of the details to get ironed out. So I'm happy to just get an update from you all at one of our next meetings and kind of get the status of all of that. And if you need help, but I'm sure that she was incredibly helpful kind of when everything hit the fan last time. So I hope that if you need any help there, just give a shout.
That would be great, Sarah. I will definitely do that and probably look for maybe an opportunity just to see if there's, some pieces, parts too. So that would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Marla, do you have anything to add?
No, I
Marla, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, just didn't want to wanted to make sure I didn't show up and not have information that you felt I should have. So I think I'm prepared.
Yeah, this is Marla. Any of those documents that you could share, that would be great at some point, so I can wrap my head around how we get the infrastructure put into place and look for additional grants. Thanks.
Cool, I can absolutely do that. All right. So with that, I think we're all set. So we'll move on to number 4, CARES Act letter. So this is just for us to apply for the funding from the state through DOLA for the CARES money that has been filtered from the federal government to the state government. The last piece of that application that I need to submit it is a letter stating from the chair of the board that the Board of County Commissioners approves the application of the CARES funding. And so as soon as I have your blessing, I can draft that letter and submit it, and our application will be complete. So with that, there's some nuances that we need to work on in the next week or so that I've talked to Sarah Dallas about. We need to write and develop a collaboration agreement between the city and the county for the CARES Act funding, because the county and the city have the ability to apply together to that funding. So basically the money is sent to the county, and the county can share that with the municipalities within their jurisdiction through this collaborative agreement. So we will need to work on that collaboration agreement with the city once we determine what our best uses are for that funding. So I would imagine that we would want to have maybe a work session on this on Tuesday. Mayor Labe, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Of course, we needed the definition of what the funds can be used. Look at, I can't do it on this computer. I can look at Sarah's schedule and see how it looks for her on Tuesday.
Right. So the CARES Act funding can be used for anything related to the response of the COVID pandemic. And I did run it through our legal, and we can use it for like a second round of grants in the wintertime for our business community. We can use it to reimburse our general funds for any unexpected expenses. We have $697,000 available to us. So we've got some flexibility to talk about how we'd like to allocate that, but I definitely think that is a conversation that we need to have together to determine how we want to use that going forward.
Is that 1 o'clock Tuesday? Would that work for you?
That'd be great for me. Sarah, Mark, what does that look like for you guys? Mark, if you want to raise your hand if Tuesday at 1 will work for you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Heck yeah.
Okay. Hey, goody. I'm fine with what you just said. As far as the previous conversations, I was in agreement. I had nothing to add. So that's where we are.
Oh, thanks so much, Mark. I appreciate you jumping on and commenting and letting us know. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Glenn.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So Tuesday at 1, I think, works for everybody. So can we schedule that conversation for Tuesday at 1 with the city to start that collaboration agreement?
Yeah. Do we need to take action on submitting the letter, or we need to have the agreement on what we would propose those funds to go towards before submitting the letter and drafting the letter?
Nope, we just, I just need to have an approval from the board to draft and submit the letter. And once I have that, then once I have our approval as a board, I'll draft the letter and put it in the application and submit it to DOLA that we have an intent on drawing that funding down.
Okay. And will this go to also towards COVID or event specific positions and staffing that's
Yes.
needed in the extent of the event and response or recovery? Great.
Yeah, and so the funding has to be utilized between March and December of 2020. So it's specific to this year right now, but we can definitely use it if we needed to allocate it to a part-time staff or something like that, which we have talked about. Jackie, Colleen, and I talked last week about the potential for an admin person at public health to assist with getting some of the paperwork and things in line. So that might be a possibility for this as well.
Okay. Great.
All right. So I will make a motion that we, as a board, approve the application for the CARES Act funding.
Second?
Second.
Oh, awesome. Any further discussion amongst the board members? Commissioner Glenn?
I have nothing.
Commissioner
No,
Mudge?
thank you. Nope, nothing right now.
Awesome, great. And I have nothing. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Awesome. Okay, so the next thing on our list, and thank you so much for being patient, Josh and Kaylee and Paul, is the EOC tower. So I'm gonna turn it over to Josh to give us an update.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're here today because we're still moving forward with this DTR site. It's been processed. I see Chris made it on. I'm guessing Rocky Mountain Family Practices, Katie, and Paul's on. So we made some progress with some stuff. I'll let the city talk about what they've done with the survey stuff. On our end here at the OEM, I have nearly completed the RFP, or at least the draft, that we'll have to forward to legal to see if that's everything in there is kosher, because I have no clue. And we'll move on from that. And then we have I don't know if this has been passed on, but the county, per the application of the state, the county, or at least the applicant, has to pay for the building, which is an additional expenditure to the 80,000 we'd already have planned on. So I've been sourcing some options for that.
Sorry, Josh, can you say that again?
We talked to Pam Monsees from OIT, the Office of Information Technology, and she clarified that for our application, that the building, we were going to supply the building, that we would pay for that. So that, knowing that, I've been trying to run down a bunch of avenues of finding a feasible, affordable option for that, especially with what's going on right now and potential budget shortfalls and stuff.
The building for which aspect?
So the little communications shed, I think is what they call it, or the communications shelter, that will house all the electronics for the tower itself. It's a 10 by 20 structure is what the plans called for. I've reached out to Pam, who gave us an absolutely ridiculous number of what it costs. I was like, so I did some more work. And I reached out to Thermobond, who manufactures those new, and it was 64,000 or near there. And then I reached out to Troy Baum from United Tower Service, who gave us a quote for it earlier this year. And he found a used one. I can't remember the location of it, but it was going to come out to about $26,000 delivered. It's a used structure. It's exactly what we need, and they would go through and make sure it was code and refurbished for install. That's the best price I found so far. I had some questions on that because thank you, Kayla. I had some questions on how we purchased this. I know that there's a $5,000 limit that we have to send stuff out for procurement. Does that apply for if we're just purchasing something outright? It's not really like something that we can really contract, I guess.
Putting it out, I mean, you collecting bids is creating, and Chris can jump in here if she like, but you're essentially doing that, in my opinion, seeing what, you know, putting out there, here's our need, as Kayla's showing here in the description, and getting quotes. It doesn't have to go out for a proposal. You just are soliciting bids for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I talked to Troy and he said that a building this like this doesn't come out very often, or doesn't come up for sale very often. They don't usually last very long. So I don't know if we can move fast enough to purchase, but there might be something that comes available later. But that was just an outstanding question I had about how, if we did decide to buy this, would we have to put it out for a proposal or not? But you just answered that question. On our end, I think that concludes what I have right now. I'll let Chris and Katie from the city just talk about the MOU, and I believe the survey's been done. Chris or Katie?
This is Chris. I think Katie is on the line, and she's probably got the more complete information than I do on those questions. And just to clarify, we're on this for the county, not representing the city, but we have been in communication with the city attorneys on this project.
Thank
Katie?
you.
Hi, this is Katie Walter with Rocky Mountain General Counsel. Chris and I did have a conversation with the city's attorneys, Linda Michow and Christiana McCormick, last week. Very productive conversation. We also received quite a bit of information from Sarah Dallas regarding the site. I just have a few updates and then a couple of questions. First, I just want to clarify that the document that the CUP, the conditional use permit, calls for is a lease, not a memorandum of understanding. And so we'll be writing an actual lease between the city and the county rather than an MOU. Next, along with the lease, the CUP conditions include the county providing title work, as well as a survey that with an updated legal description. You know, based on the documents that I've seen that the city had on hand, you know, even if the CUP permit didn't require those items, we definitely would want them. It's not clear from the documents we have whether there are any easements through the property. And in fact, it's not even totally clear which lots the city owns. And so I know that Paul Clarkson ordered a survey to be completed by Marston Engineering. They've begun some kind of preliminary work on that. I believe that should be done anytime in the next week or two based on their emails, but I haven't seen an update from them in the last couple of days. In terms of title work, Central Colorado Title is able to do a title search and provide title commitment. That will understand that title searches takes a long time because there's so many grantors and grantees where the county and city are listed. And so he estimated, Brett Eakins, who owns Central Colorado Title, estimated that could cost as much as $1,000 based on an hourly rate of $100 an hour. And so, you know, he thought 8 to 10 hours. And also due to just some of the restrictions for getting access to the files right now, it might take a week or two for him to get that, to finish that, or at least get us a preliminary commitment. We really need both of those documents to write the lease so we can accurately describe the land itself that's being leased. And also, we definitely need that information before any construction begins, so you're not accidentally building on any easements or anything like that. So I wanted to ask the commissioners if you're comfortable with that price range. I did not seek any bids from other title companies, but I could definitely check with Stewart Title and find out what their estimate would be. That's one thing that, you know, if I have the go ahead, I'll or if you'd like me to check with Stewart, I'll do that. But otherwise, we do need to order that title work still. Let's see. Also, just want, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Is the, Paul, I think you're still on the line here. Is Marson moving forward with survey work? Anticipated?
Knowledge they are, but they ask for some title work to be done. And Katie, what else were they looking for? I can't remember.
Well, there was a little bit of confusion because the site plan that Mr. Schreiber had put together references a 2013 survey and some miscellaneous title work. I spoke with him, with Craig, and it turns out the survey he's referring to was not, it was a different block. It was not block 35, it was block 17 or something. And so his drawings are accurate, or, you know, to the extent that you would want to rely on them for what they're being used for, which is just sort of an illustration of the project. But he didn't actually have a 2013 survey of the parcel under consideration. And then he apparently sort of erroneously referenced title work on that site plan. So there doesn't seem to be any historical documents that we can draw from, which means that's part of why the title work is going to take a little more time than it might if we had something more recent. And so I did let Larson know that we don't have anything more than the current deeds for them to take a look at. It might be helpful to them, and I sent them the site plan so they can see that the lots that are to be used for the project. Josh, I would say if you look at that site plan that Craig put together, if you wouldn't mind double checking, because it seems like the public notice on the project references certain lots, and then the CUP application references certain lots, and then the final decision on the CUP, there's some differences between the three documents I have that reference the lots for the project, but that'll be really important for Marson to complete the survey. So if you wouldn't mind just double checking that at the very least that site plan accurately, you know, as best as Craig could, draws out the lots that are going to be used for the project. Then I can go back to Marson and say, this is it as best we know.
Okay, we did go through those plats that we found at building and land use. So I think the lot numbers are accurate, but I'll double check that. I think we still have a lot of the documentation up here from when we did that back in January. So I'll go through that. Yeah,
I think ultimately Craig ended up overlaying the drawing on the 1966 plat when that block was first platted in the city. But obviously since then, a lot of things have changed, and that's where we need the title work and the survey to nail down the address. And, you know, the biggest concern is easements and any encroachments, and then of course ownership. We want to be certain that the city actually owns all of the lots that it's leasing. So that, I would say best case scenario, we're looking at a couple of weeks on both of those items. And the lease is in progress. We've been trading some notes with the city's attorneys. And then both, because this is a multi-year obligation, meaning both the city and the county would be entering into an agreement that would bind them for more than 1 year. The lease will need to be authorized via resolution, and and an ordinance at the city level, which the city has notice requirements for. But in talking with the city's attorneys, they're willing to start that notice process as soon as we think that the legal description and the title work is less than 2 weeks out. You know, you can use sort of a placeholder description for the notice, and just so we can start the clock ticking. But that kind of gets me to one of my questions for you, Josh, which is, what is the timeline on the project right now?
I give it, so I talked to Pam Monsees about that question because I thought it was pertinent, especially with potential revenue loss because of COVID. So she said that all of the allocated funding should remain. But if it sits too long, the state will start to view it as it's something that we might lose it after like a year or two. So I think we're safe if this takes a long time through the summer based off of stuff, or it pushes till next summer. I think we'll be okay on funding from the state. I know for the CUP from the city, it's good for 2 years, according to Sarah Dallas, before we'd have to reapply to that. So I think, I mean, it's kind of hard to forecast what budgets are for, you know, ourselves, let alone the state beyond. But I think that our funding for this should be secure through next summer is what the gist of what Pam told me. But the longer we sit on it, the more the likelihood increases that it'll get repurposed elsewhere to fund more pertinent projects.
So if this part of the paperwork is a month or so out, that's not a major.
It shouldn't hinder us as far as moving forward. It's not something that needs to be done by August. I mean, I think we'd all like to get it started and done quicker. But at this point, it might, you know, if this is how long it's going to take, this is how long it's going to take.
Yeah, and you've got the RFP to process as well, so that'll have some time. A couple other questions that pertain to the lease, if you don't mind my asking. What were you guys thinking in terms of the length of a lease? Or I should ask, how does this sit with you? A 10-year lease with automatic renewal provisions. So in other words, it could go, the way the CUP is written is that when the equipment is no longer being used, it has to be removed from the property. You know, how does 10-year periods that renew seem like a reasonable amount of time? Do you have any idea?
I'll let the commissioners answer that one because I'm not sure on. Kaylee's saying that you think the state has a requirement.
Paul, you have a question too. We'll come to you in just a second.
According to the state, Kaylee just brought up that we have to have an agreement with the landowner for a minimum of 20 years.
Okay.
A minimum of 20 years? Okay.
Correct.
All right. That will, I don't think that'll be any problem with the city, but we were just kind of throwing out.
And Kaylee linked it in the chat there too, if you want to see it.
Okay. Great. That's very helpful to know. And then I know in the application, the existing towers, it references existing towers in Hagerman Pass and Granite, I think. Are there existing leases in place for those towers?
The one on top of Hagerman, I believe, is BLM.
Okay.
So they would have
operate that.
A Bureau of Reclamation owns the tower on top of Hagerman.
Okay.
And do you know the Granite one? I don't know Granite. Yeah, and we're unsure of who owns the Granite Tower, but Bureau of Rec owns the one on Hagerman.
Okay. Well, if you happen to have those, it would be interesting to see them. I don't need them, but it would be interesting.
I can pull. We've been talking to Delta County. They just put a tower up recently. I'll see if because they did theirs on BLM land. I'll see if they can forward me their BLM lease, and I'll send it to you.
We have some things to work from. I don't want to miss anything if someone else has thought of it. And then,
Katie,
yeah.
real quick, Ann Schneider from Land Use has put in the chat that they have copies of leases associated with towers
Oh,
on
good.
file.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think maybe Eagle County is the Minturn, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Paul, did you have something to add?
All I wanted to add was I recommend that we ask Katie to proceed with Colorado Central title because it's $1,000. And even if it's $1,200 or even $1,500, it's still below the $5,000 limit for goods or services.
Yeah.
But and it sounds like we got a problem with the building.
In terms of needing to bid it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with Colorado Central with that title company, Paul, if that's what you would recommend. And then I think we can work with Chris and Katie potentially. Do we still have the sole source justification that was previously used by Mike McCarg for us to secure that tower building that we had been?
So,
This is Chris. I'm scrolling through the financial policy now, trying to look at that. I'll circle back around in just a minute.
yeah, I have that up as well. I mean, one of the things about the bidding process is there's no minimum time period for the bid to be publicized, and there's no requirement that the publication be in, let's say, the newspaper or frankly anywhere other than there's nowhere is specified, so it could be the county's website. So we can help with that bid process for the building if you'd like.
We have a clear scope though. Is that list that Kayla showed, that's what we know we need for the building, correct?
So that list that I had just shared, let me get it here, Sarah. This came directly from the quote that Josh was able to secure for that $26,000. I think I have one more. Josh, did you get more than one?
I have one directly from Thermobond too. Let me see if
I think I might have that in my email.
I forwarded it to the sheriff. I think she probably sent it to you.
So we have, what I'm trying to think, if we have a clear list of what we know, the equipment we need in that building, and then whatever mechanical equipment that we need and other furnishings, we put that out for bids, but we need to be able to remain pretty flexible or ready to perhaps pull the trigger on something, because it seems like you can buy these units used, as you were saying, Josh?
Correct. So this is a unit. It was decommissioned from he told me, but I can't remember exactly where. I think it was somewhere on the East Coast.
Okay.
They just decommissioned the site, and then the building goes up for sale because they can make a little money on it.
Okay.
This is almost exactly what Thermobond quoted me. It looks almost identical to this. So, and Troy, sorry. He owns a tower company here in Colorado that he puts up these for the state all the time. So he's very aware of what the requirements of a electronic shed you have to be, because they generate a ton of heat. So you have to have so much cooling capacity and such.
So it looks like they come with like the air conditioned units on them, and they're a concrete structure, right, Josh? It can't just be like a shed, right?
No, this one is concrete. They do come in some other forms. The one I got from Thermobond was like they're more like frame structure, so like more like something that was more in line with like what you see like a house built out of. It still met all the snow loads and wind load requirements for the county. It was the cheaper option, but if we can get a concrete one at this price, I mean, I don't see why we'd pass that up.
How do you, if we know if we decide that our budget is up to $30,000 because we're looking for used. We publish the need for a used unit to solicit submissions to you. But you're saying they don't last long. And so,
According to Troy, I honestly, I'm not an expert in tower construction or
yeah,
anything. So that's what Troy told me. He's been pretty honest with us so far. And what he's been telling us has usually been pretty accurate. I asked him if they could just build us a structure if it would be cheaper that way. And he said it's really hard to make one that's, he hasn't done one in so long that because everyone buys these pre-built ones, that it might not be cost effective. A part of that quote too, he said, that's delivery. We have to pay for the foundation still too, and the unloading of it with a crane. So that cost is still on top of that 26,000.
So I think, Josh, in the quote that he provided, let me pull it up here. In the quote he had provided, he lists the crane to load the shelter, but not to unload the shelter once it gets here, it looks like.
Correct.
Okay.
So that would come at our end on the construction side, which if we end up contracting with him, he would manage all that himself as well. If we accepted his bid, which it sounds like he wants to put one in when we do put it out for proposal. But as far as the rest of that that cost will fall on us and the arrangement of a crane and all that. But I'm sure once we pick a contractor, we can coordinate that with them on that end. But I'm unsure of what that cost would be.
Okay. We can maybe ask Michael Irwin at Public Works if he can get us an estimate, maybe.
They might know because I was part of when they moved the fuel tanks at the airport a number of years back. So they might have an idea of what crane service to use because I think those fuel tanks probably weigh more than that building does.
Yeah,
So,
I think probably like Breckenridge Crane or something like that, I think is what we used.
I wondered too if through Public Works with the state sourcing, there's a avenue to look for these structures.
I can do some research on some other tower companies as well and see if I'll do some legwork and maybe track down some other offers or some other available units and stuff.
Uh-huh.
I feel like a lot of this you're not going to find it on like Marketplace on Facebook, unfortunately. So you have to have kind of connections or something to source one of these. So I'll see what I can do to find some other contractors that maybe they can source one for us as well.
Do you think it might be possible that we, the city and the county, might want to hang a cell antenna on this? Because I've been asking that question and I've never been getting an answer.
I know when we went through the CUP process, the city was very interested in that aspect. According to Troy, his proposal is that we spend a little bit more on the tower to have a little bit more room. And because if you can put a communications company on top of that, he said the leases for that can be anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 a month in revenue.
Shall I pursue that?
So I just want to note that the one of the conditions of the CUP was
They have to go through another CUP.
right, that no co-location would take place without
A CUP, yeah, I know. But I do have a pretty strong connection that could actually pursue that line of thinking. And we might even be able to get help in building some of these expenses in doing it.
Paul, can you, at least on that, if we do go that route, could you see if the current tower that we have proposed for like what we need for the county, if that would support the addition of a cell company on it too? So if we could avoid.
Where does that tower come from?
Sorry, what was that?
Where does that tower come from?
That I do not know. I think it'll come.
Who designed it?
That was basically what the state gave us for requirements.
Could we ask the state?
Okay.
And because these individuals that I know have worked with the state rather extensively, and I think even with Delta County, on co-locating cell service on Delta County's tower. But I think this is something we probably need to pursue sooner rather than later.
I think it's a good avenue to go down, but I don't know if that's my decision to make.
Folks, this is Chris. I just want to chime in. I pulled up the financial policy in response to Commissioner Mudge's question about whether we could use, or the county could use, the sole source provision in there for this. And the way it reads is that the county, in effect, can depart from the bidding procedures requirements for informal purchases in situations where emergency conditions exist, or if what you're seeking to purchase is obtainable for practical purposes from only one source. And so it sounds like to me that unless you can declare that an emergency situation exists for this, it sounds like to me there might be more than one source of buying these structures, either secondhand or what. I think we need to be able to prove that the bid that Josh got isn't available, that the resource isn't available from someone else in order to implement the sole source option. Sorry.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. I also have a question too around that. Would the cost be a justifiable reason for us to utilize the sole source aside from emergency? I mean, because I think if we can get this for $26,000 compared to $85,000, would that be a justifiable reason for us to utilize the sole source?
Well, and I think, but unfortunately, the policy isn't very well written. It's rather vague, but I would make the argument that the phrase "for practical purposes" may counsel in favor of supporting that approach. So if it ends up that you can only find this used one from the quote that Josh got, then I think you can at least make a good faith argument that yes, the county being able to source it from that one resource for a used unit versus paying 2 to 3 times as much for a new unit would make sense. Obviously what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to be able to establish the basis for why you're implementing the sole source provision in the policy.
Is there a way that the contractor who's building the tower could build or purchase this shed? Because, as long as you competitively bid for the contractor services, if the any subcontractors or purchases they make under those terms, the county doesn't have to then go through a separate bidding process. Is that something you've considered?
I mean, I guess could we write that into the RFP that they have to source a building for us? Would that alleviate these questions, Chris?
You'd have to be more specific in terms. You'd have to pretty much direct them as to what resource you want them to use. Because if you just say they're required to source it, then it could be from anyone they decide to look at. And so I don't know if that would necessarily with that process. And if there is a time frame where, for example, your resource said, hey, this is what it is right now. We don't know how long it'll last. If they aren't readily available on the market, then it could end up the delay in waiting till you get the RFP, the proposals back in response to the RFP, that resource won't be there anymore. Plus, if you mandate, I'm sorry, Commissioner, I was just going to say, plus if you mandate that in the RFP for the contractor is going to build it, if you mandate that they have to purchase a used unit, if you will, that can end up creating a delay depending on availability of such used units.
So I just want to make sure that you're talking about for the building itself. We need to put out that we need to put out bids. not for proposals, but you're talking about including possibly in the RFP, which doesn't sound like that is practical. Supplying that building, I mean, we could put it as a budget of $25,000 or whatever, and then that contractor could do the same kind of sourcing that maybe we are. But I think that if we look to a couple more sources and maybe publish that we're looking for this facility and collect our own, and we have the time to do this, right? To acquire this building?
So that's part of the question. And so keep in mind that your financial policy in regards to this pertains to goods and equipment. It's not specific to services. So if you're buying a used unit, then more than likely it's going to be construed as equipment because it's already built. So you're not building something from scratch, essentially, which I think would allow you to depart from the express terms of this as well. I see that Ann makes a good point, and something I was going to bring up as well, that usually with construction of towers, it's not piecemeal. You don't have the owner of the property who's wanting to build the tower piecemeal it out so that you have, the owner buying the equipment and stuff and then the contractor coming in and putting it all together. Usually the contractor who's engaged to build the tower overall is including provision of the ancillary, equipment and stuff like that in the proposal. That my suggestion would be, unless you think the contractor you choose to build the tower won't be able to find this building at a competitive price of the bid that Josh received so far, my suggestion would be to let them do it all, because as Katie said, putting it all into that one RFP allows you to go in and approve it up front. They're not having to come back to you for, for example, the building or other equipment that might be used.
Okay.
It looks like you have some more information from land use, Josh, that you can rely on, perhaps.
Yeah, and I'll take any examples I have. Like, obviously, this is all a new process to myself. So any help I can get with stuff that already exists would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
And then is there any proposal for where that expense can come from with any cost savings across the county or in departments?
I think that we can definitely have that conversation with Crystal to ask her where she thinks it would be appropriate for us to talk about cost savings. And I'm sure that if we were to have that conversation with the sheriff, she would be amenable to assisting with what she can from her budget as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just have one other question related to the lease, which related to the state's rights of access and ownership interest in the project. It was a little unclear to me from the application. It sounded like they would have some ability to monitor the facility and possibly even enter onto the property. Can you tell me a little bit about what the state needs to have?
The state will, the county will own the structure and the tower, and will maintain the property. The state will provide the generator and all of the electronic equipment, so the microwave and such, that'll be housed inside the building. So they will need access to that, and they will perform maintenance on that as well. All the equipment mounted on the tower will also be provided by the state. So that's pretty much the breakdown of how it's going to be divided between the county and the state.
Okay. That's all I had.
So can I guess I'd like to move to direct Katie to move forward with the title work, along with the survey work that's being done by Marcin, so we can make progress on the lease with the city.
Okay.
I'll second that. Commissioner Glenn, do you have any questions or comments or any discussion further?
I do not.
All right. I do not have any further discussion. Anything from you, Commissioner Mudge? All right. All those in favor? Aye.
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 All right, Katie, that's good from us to go ahead and get that work done, and then we can work on that lease with the city.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, I think that's everything that we have on our agenda for today. Commissioner Glenn, thank you so much for joining us and being able to raise your hand and speak when you could speak. We really appreciate it, and appreciate your time today. And thank you, Sarah, for being here, and everybody else. We appreciate it and appreciate you. So with that, we will adjourn today at 2:46. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.